It's not necessarily appropriate for animals with really heavy body conditions. So it's valuable to try to understand what's the composition, not just what are the ingredients, but what's the composition of the food. Most of the was it almost time? Okay, thanks. Most of the high-end dog and cat foods on the market today, those that are at more than 400 calories in a measuring cup, they often are trying to market meat as the first ingredient, and so they're going to be a little bit more expensive, and they're going to have more protein. But how much protein does a dog need? Does a dog need 50% of its overall diet to be protein? No, it doesn't. And there's really a wide range between what's the minimum according to AFCO or the NRC, the National Research Council. What's the lowest kind of threshold for an adult dog in terms of protein? It's somewhere down around 20 to 21%, maybe even a little bit lower than 20%. What's the highest in a typical dog food, especially like those raw diets? Those are up around 50% protein. 50% of the calories is as protein. So in between that 20, which is the minimum, and 50, which is a maximum, it's a maximum of what people will pay. What you get is you get some levels or some thresholds where you've met all the amino acid requirements, and the animal loves the food, it's very tasty, but if they've met all their amino acid requirements, where's that extra energy, where's that extra protein going? It's getting converted to energy, it's getting converted to fat. So that's what happened to my dog Odie. He does not need that food. All right, does that prompt any other questions from anyone?
I've heard the grain-free diet is going to help dogs with allergies. What do you think of that?
The question is, what about grain-free diets helping dogs with allergies? I don't think very much of it, only because there's so many things that can create allergies in dogs that you have to start with the basics before you get all the way to, gosh, it might be the food. So there are parasites, right? There's environmental allergens, and those are actually more likely to cause the problems than the actual food. But having said that, if the animal has no fleas, if the animal and the environment's been completely cleaned up, and somebody wants to try to, figure out, well, maybe I should do a diet trial. I would be less concerned about the carbohydrates, and I would look at a primary protein source. But you have to take a really good diet history, right? You have to see, all right, well, how many different foods has this animal been on? Because if this animal in its young life has been on everything from lamb to venison, chicken to beef, well, then it hardly matters. But if they've had primarily, like they were only on one type of puppy food, and then they switched to an adult food, and those were mostly poultry-based, well, then maybe you could switch to something else and see if that might make a difference. So there's ways to do that, but just because you make a switch and you don't see any difference doesn't mean that it still might not be food, and the opposite is true too. Just because you make a switch and you don't see an improvement doesn't mean that it wasn't fleas or it wasn't the environment or something else. So it's complicated when it comes to allergies. And if there's also seasonal allergies. So I wouldn't jump right to, oh, let's go look for a grain-free diet. That's not at the top of the list. Yeah. Go ahead.
How do you feel about like vegetarian cat food products? Like, do those adequately supply the amino acids that cats need?
Good question. The question's about vegetarian cat products. Do vegetarian foods provide the amino acids that cats need? And you can make a vegetarian diet for a cat, but I'm not aware of anyone in which a cat will eat it long enough to sustain an adequate body weight. There's actually better success with vegetarian diets for dogs. So because dogs are omnivores and dogs are different than cats. A lot of dogs will eat all kinds of stuff. So it's not that every dog would eat a vegetarian diet, but you've got a better odds that a dog will probably do it. Yeah. So if somebody wanted to really, really try, I would say you can try, but you're going to have to add the artificial. You can start with some vegetarian natural products, but you're going to have to add some of those amino acids and essential fatty acids that come from animal sources. They have to be artificially added. So then whether or not the owner wants to do that and the cat will eat it is the big trick. Yeah. Other questions? Go ahead.
I've heard some like really bad things about Beneful food for dogs. Like, is any of that true? Is it actually bad?
There is a website where you can go and find people writing all kinds of bad things about every food. And it's called consumeraffairs.com. Anybody heard of that? Someone turned me on to that, so I went to go and check out some stuff. And products like Beneful have hundreds and hundreds of complaints against them. But that's partly because it's one of the national bestsellers. So you can always go to a company's website and see what they're saying. If they're making a big deal about defending their products, you can take that one of two ways. One, they've got the resources to defend the product, or two, maybe there's something going on, right? You know, be suspicious. The reputable website that I check out to see if products are problematic is the FDA pet food recall website. So anyone can post something at the FDA pet food recall website, but what has happened a lot since 2007, that's when the melamine pet food recall happened. What's happened since 2007 is that many pet food companies take the proactive stance of entering their product at that website, and they say, all right, we're doing a, not mandatory, but a proactive kind of a recall. Not that we've seen any animals that are sick, but we've identified something inside the factory or the manufacturing facility that might be a problem, and we're recalling all these foods. So I periodically try to look and see if there are different kinds of products there. I don't typically see Beneful floating up to the top. There is one manufacturer over the years that I've seen on a regular basis, and that's Diamond. So Diamond as a company makes their own food, Diamond dog food, Diamond cat food. They also make store brand products for other manufacturers, or for other vendors, like chicken soup for the dog lover's soul. Have you ever heard of that? And so they make a couple of products like that. And over the past 10 years, they seem to be a company that I've seen at the Pet Food Recall website that pops up frequently. You know, like frequently, I mean like once every 3 years or so. That's frequent. Most of these other manufacturers hardly are there. Some of the manufacturers of raw diets are sometimes there. So I guess what you have to do is you have to balance whatever you've been hearing about the negative things with what is the company saying, what can you find from the Pet Food Recall website, and then